Well, I'm seeing all kinds of fun people on our attendee list as people are logging in. So I see Commissioner Mark Samuelian out there from Miami Beach. So want to thank you for joining. I see Elizabeth Wheaton also from Miami Beach, in charge of a lot of the resiliency efforts there. See some friends from Brickell. A few friends from Shenandoah. Oh, we have Representative Nick Duran's office on. So, oh, and our friends, Neil, hi, the DDA is in the house. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Leanne, do you think we mostly have everybody in to get started for now?
I think we are good to go. We have about 43 participants.
Perfect.
Yeah, just let me know when you'd like me to share the screen.
I think let's share. Well, let's let Nancy give a few introductory remarks.
Yeah.
And then we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. I think we'll probably have a few more people trickling in, but we do have a great crowd. And the way we're running this event tonight is it's a webinar on Zoom. So you can see and hear us, and you can ask us questions in writing using the Q&A function that's down at the bottom of the screen. So as we're moving along, if you think of something you want to talk about, just send us the question, and we're going to do question and answer at the end. We're hoping to have at least 25 minutes for question and answer or discussion. So don't worry, we will get to you. But we do feel like when there's this many people online, it works more smoothly if we let the presentation go ahead and go, and then we capture what people wanted to talk about. You may see things in the chat from us to you. So for example, Leanne and Anna from our team sent out a link to the presentation because we noticed that it might be a little bit hard to see on the Zoom screen, so you can follow along at home. And if you're using another person's link, Leanne is reminding us, can you change the name? You can go to your box. There's 3 little dots up in the right-hand corner, and it gives you it's a drop-down menu, and you can hit rename, and you can write your name in, just because we like to know who's in the room with us. And I think you can do that by phone as well. So we've got one person call. Oh no, I guess you're on phone. Sorry, never mind. But anyway, we will try to keep things moving and capture and get to the point where we can answer as many questions as possible. But again, thanks for spending your time with us, and we will hand it over to our Commissioner, Eileen Higgins.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking time at sort of the end of the workday at 5 o'clock to learn about what are some of the next steps that need to be taken to protect Biscayne Bay from what we've been doing to her for way too long. And for those of you that don't know, just about a year ago, the county convened countywide, pretty technical Biscayne Bay Task Force, where we put subject matter experts together in a room several times. I'll let Arella describe the process, but literally these were university professionals, engineers, water experts, supported by county staff, and they were charged to come up with an action plan for Biscayne Bay that the county as a countywide entity and the commission can begin to implement their recommendations, and so that all the municipalities as well could have a blueprint of where to go. And that was a lot of work, and we are very fortunate tonight because I thought you as residents might like to hear from the chairwoman of the Biscayne Bay Task Force And then one of the other leading participants who went through this very participatory process in understanding what are the things we can do and in what order we should be doing them from a priority perspective. So I'm not going to do most of the talking because you want to hear from people that are more experts than I, and I want to hear from them too, because their job is to tell people like me what we need to do from a legislative and a budget perspective to make the changes we need so that we never see thousands of dead fish floating around our neighborhoods and our bay ever again. So I'm going to just do a quick intro so you can see how great our two presenters are tonight. We have Ms. Irela Bagay, who was the chair of the task force, but she's also president and CEO of her own consulting group, and they have really been specializing in all kinds of things: water policy, sustainability, climate mitigation, all of the areas of expertise that we really need to make a difference. She's also, she's served on the Miami River Commission. She's been part of the South Florida Water Management District. So her expertise in how everything connects to the Bay is very wide and very deep. And I think anybody that's involved with water-related activities in the county has heard of or heard from Irela. And then we also have Dr. Lynette Carruth with us, who is actually, she's a great county volunteer participating, or voluntold, depending on what she does. She is the vice president of Moffitt and Nickel, and she's their director of resilience and adaptation. So her expertise in resiliency planning, decision-making, strategic consulting, looking at wetlands, looking at beaches, also is very, very important. So she was selected to serve on the Biscayne Bay Task Force as a technical expert. And then what is really great about Lynette is she is actually my appointee to the county's planning advisory board. So we're bringing that expertise into zoning decisions through Lynette's insights there. So I'm just going to turn it over to the people that know this bay and know the task force, and then at the end we'll do as much Q&A as you all have time for. So I'll turn it over to you, Irela.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and it's truly a pleasure to speak to you all today. It's been a long process to develop a recovery plan for Biscayne Bay. And as you said, the county, Miami-Dade County formed the Biscayne Bay Task Force. And it came as a result of many advocates, Bay advocates and organizations and citizens that were really sounding the alarm on the health of Biscayne Bay back in 2017. So the county heard us loud and clear and put together this task force. We're both, Dr. Cardoche and I were fortunate to be part of this process. And we were charged with developing a final report with recommendations to basically improve the health of Biscayne Bay. We held about 18 meetings, heard over 35 presentations from experts from state, county, municipalities, academia, environmental organizations, other models that have been successful in recovering their own ecosystems. So, you know, there was a lot of work, and again, we could have never imagined that our report would coincide this horrific fish kill and green algae, and of course being challenged by a pandemic all at the same time. So, but nevertheless, we are pleased with the attention that the Bay is finally getting. And so, next slide, I will show you all the work and all the good faith attempts and similar processes that we just went through over time. I mean, this has been going on since the 70s. We've been trying to help the Bay in one form or fashion. And some of these plans have been implemented too slowly or often abandoned, put on a shelf. So we were kind of afraid that our report was going to end up in the same boat. But, you know, the difference this time is, as we've all seen with our own eyes, we have no more time. We have to act now, and we have to act together. So the task force began meeting last year, and you know, we've developed a group of recommendations. We tried to be as holistic as possible, and we focused our recommendations primarily to address the water quality first, and really help stabilize some of the parts of the bay that are in the most trouble. And we've heard a lot about the north part of the bay. And the bay is a very vast and large watershed. And so expands all the way from Aventura, I believe, all the way down to the Florida Keys. So there's a lot of issues, and depending on where you are, you're gonna have different water quality problems. So we wanted to kind of set some short-term goals that we can meet right away and start immediately, and then set a path for a comprehensive recovery, and really develop permanent oversight, which is something that we realized was missing from Biscayne Bay. So we focused on some overarching governing recommendations that we needed to implement an administrative structure to really provide oversight, and also have a point person, a chief bay officer, that would serve as that kind of bay traffic cop to really work with all the different agencies and all the municipalities, because what we really found was that there's a lot of things going on and a lot of people trying to do things for the health of Biscayne Bay, but no one's really coordinating. So that was one of the #1 issues that we really wanted to address. And then we recommended a governing structure, basically bringing all these entities together, meet, and start implementing some action. And we developed 7 policy themes: water quality, obviously, I mentioned; governance, I mentioned; infrastructure, our aging pipes that are bursting every other day, you know, impacting the watershed. We focused on habitat, you know, restoration, natural infrastructure. Mangroves are very important, not only for filtration purposes, but also for, you know, coastal resilience, you know, protecting us from storms. Marine debris. We have a huge marine debris problem. We all know this. We all know this. Education and outreach, because maybe we can solve some of the marine debris problems with our education and outreach efforts. And of course, how are we going to pay for everything? Because there's some things that we probably have money for, but there's some things that are enormously, enormously costly, like septic to sewer, for example, that we'll talk about a little later. So in essence, we're calling for a unified, committed effort once and for all for Miami-Dade County to work with all the municipalities, all the agencies, and the public, all of us, to really, you know, set a path and chart our course to a healthy Biscayne Bay. And we feel, at least this time, because we have no more time, that we'll get there. And at least the scientists, and I'm not a scientist, I'm an advocate, they are saying that we still have some time if we focused right now. So in summary, basically we confirmed the health of Biscayne Bay, it's in a state of emergency. We're at a tipping point for an irreversible ecological collapse, but we still have a little time to get it right. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Dr. Cardoche. She's going to talk to us a little bit about how we ended up in this condition to begin with.
Yeah, thank you. I think most of us don't really think much about our underground infrastructure until it's too late. We see things like roadways, and we can tell when you're seeing things with like the capacity, you know, too many cars, or even the condition when you get all those bumps in the road. But for a lot of the things that we really need for water quality, those underground pipes, it's just not in our level of consciousness. We have water that comes to our house, we have our waste that goes away, and so it's not likely that we think much about it until we have these closures like we see here on the slide of, you know, no closing and the bacterial levels are too high, and we've been seeing that for the beaches coming along. And so, next slide, please. And so when we had these fish kills last month, it just really reminded all of us of the urgency that we have to continue to save this bay. And Norella refers to that tipping point, and we're seeing all our systems just on this verge of collapse. And I'll talk a little bit about how these fish kills happen. One of the things I do want to say is thank you to the Miami Waterkeeper that's not only allowed us to use some of these slides, but they've done a really great job of elevating these issues of water quality, or maybe I should say lack of water quality, to the broader audience. And going back to another thing Norella said about this need for collective action, this call for action that we have right now really does involve all of us, from scientists, engineers, general public, the community groups. We're really all in this together. Next slide. So when we start to think about the impact to the bay, there, you can kind of divide it up into, you know, our little kind of Hollywood Square look that we've got going here with issues with septic tanks, the sewer system, so those underground pipelines, fertilizers, not just the home use that we do, but also some of the agricultural uses, and finally, stormwater. And when I'm talking about the stormwater, I'm not just referring to the collection system that catches the rain for us in my city of Miami and Miami-Dade County. In this time, I'm really talking also about the traditional stormwater system, but also the broader canal that belongs to the South Florida Water Management System, Water Management District. So we're all used to in Miami-Dade seeing canals, whether they're big ones or small ones. And for the purposes of the conversation today, I'm including those types of canals because they're really a big source for us too. So next slide. So as we start to look at our system of the bay, we start to see things from the sewage leaks that we have, and in this case, you know, it's depicted like it's, you know, sitting in the water. A lot of the ones that we get are in roadways, they get run off through canals, etc. Again, the stormwater system, fertilizer, septic, but throughout all this, what we see is we get a lot of things coming into the bay with the water that comes along with it, and it's not just the nutrients of nitrogen and phosphorus. We get a lot of bacteria, like I mentioned, with the beach closures, a lot of sediments, and obviously just garbage, a bunch of trash that comes in and comes out of those storm drains as well. So next slide. And the big deal for us in Biscayne Bay is that it really fuels what we're seeing now with those fish kills and a lot of the dying off. So with this addition of the excess nutrients and bacteria, you start to see this algal growth. The algae start to die, they suck up the oxygen, the poor little fish go belly up. As they decompose, they release some more nutrients back into the system. And so you have this, basically you end up with this cycle that as you continue to increase the nutrients, increase the algae, the fish kill, et cetera, and that's what we're seeing now is this cycling. And obviously, there's a lot more I could be saying about this, and I'm really passionate about it, but I would like to hand it back to the commissioner now to talk about some of these areas for action, and I look forward to some of the questions as well.
Well, okay. I think you heard, I mean, it's really the four squares, right? We have issues with septic to sewer conversions. I think a lot of us on this call are residents of the city of Miami and Miami Beach, and we're used to being on a sewer system, but large sections of the county are not. We continue to need to upgrade our stormwater system. And the other thing that we have here is nutrient loads. And we have not had a county fertilizer ordinance. And that is something that I am working on with Commissioner Levine Cava. And we hope to introduce it in October at committee, which would mean it would be November approval by the full board. And this is one of those things that we've needed to do for a long time. And as Irela said, unfortunately, sometimes it really takes a dramatic event to garner the political will to make something happen, because this fertilizer ordinance is going to change how we are able to use fertilizers, either as people who may have a lawn, perhaps condo management companies that have common areas that they're maintaining, and then also how landscape companies are able to apply fertilizers during the rainy season. I mean, the biggest problems for nutrient load is during the rainy season, right? You fertilize, let's say your lawn, and the next thing you know, it rains and it's in Biscayne Bay, providing food for algae rather than for our lawns. And as that algae grows, you saw from Dr. Cardoche, the more algae we have in the bay, the less oxygen we have in the bay, and the less likely it is for our little fishies and eels and crabs to live successfully in the bay. So this is something that other counties in Florida have done, and I do think we will get this through. But had we not had that very dramatic event, you know, you all can imagine the kinds of critiques we would get. Well, this is telling people what to do, and this is government over-regulating, and this seems anti-business. But what I can tell you in this county, the Bay is our business. The Bay is our economy, right? Everything from people wanting to live along the water, which brings property tax revenue into the county in a very crucial way, from people who want to paddleboard, from commercial people who love to fish in the Bay, who love to sail in the Bay, who love to boat in the Bay. And so if our Bay dies, our economy dies with it. And so for me, this is an easy first step that we can do. There's going to be lots of training, right? It's not going to be punitive that we're going to have to learn how to change differently. We'll have a certification program to do that. So that's one thing that you're going to see coming very quickly from the Biscayne Bay Task Force recommendations. It was one of their, we've got to do this. And so we are off to doing it. If you live in District 5, you don't have to call me to tell me you support this ordinance, but if you're on the call and you don't live in District 5, you could tell your county commissioner to please be supportive of these things. The other important thing that the commission, that the Bay, the task force did was say, we've got to have a chief Bay officer, right? Somebody's got to be in charge. And so we did, at the county level, sponsored by Commissioner Rebecca Sosa. We have formally charged the mayor with creating that position, and we have demanded that the money to fund that, that new job be included in next year's budget. And our budget will be approved on Thursday night, and I am sure that that will go through. We have met no resistance whatsoever. And that will be the first step towards forming an entity, right? Because the Bay doesn't actually exist as an entity, right? The Bay can't apply for grant funding. The Bay can't make decisions because we've never set up a structure across municipalities to do that. So Miami-Dade County can apply for a grant, or the city of Miami Beach can apply for things, but we don't have a body that collectively makes decisions and sets direction for the Bay. And for me, that's a big priority of a next step to the long-term solutions. And as, forget if it was Arella or Lynette who said this, but it's not hopeless. Tampa Bay got started long before us, but their seagrass did come back, and they stopped using fertilizer. And so it may take years to turn this around, but if we don't start, we will never get there. And then before we go into Q&A, where we can answer any technical questions, you want to just go to the next slide. There's a few things you can take action on now. You probably can't see this slide on your little mini Zoom screen, especially if you're on your phone, but we will email this to you. There are things that we as human beings can do, right? We've all seen the garbage in the Bay. So making sure we're not using single-use plastics. And also we've all seen the bottle, the water bottles rushing down the street. They end up in the Bay, and then they form those microplastics. Same for styrofoam. Pets waste. We often talk about the sewer system, but let's remember, if we're not picking up our pets during the rainy season and it rains in, that goes directly into the Bay. There are lots of folks that do local cleanups, and you can always reach out. I think Dave Dobler, who was another task force member, is one of the people that runs Bay cleanups virtually every weekend. And then, it's not a water quality meeting if you don't talk about toilets. So only flush toilet paper on the toilet. Hate to sound like your mother, but we talk about sewage spills, and they are caused from a lot of different varieties of things. But one of the things is our pumps getting clogged with things that people have flushed down the toilets that those pumps are not really able to handle. So things like baby wipes, right? Or maybe now we're all using those Clorox little hand wipes to clean things down for COVID. Please throw those in the trash. I can't tell you how many times our pumps clog, and then we unfortunately have a sewage spill. So you can actually help with that as well. We still have to spend over $1 billion, which we have already in the budget, upgrading some of these facilities. So those projects are underway, but even new pumps will be clogged if you're flushing the wrong things down the toilet. Sunscreens, several communities have tried to make reef-safe sunscreens so that we're not killing the ecosystem in the bay, and the state, which always likes to forbid us from implementing good ideas. So the state has forbid us from that, but we as human beings can choose to use whatever kind of sunscreen we want. So do that. We already talked about fertilizers and pesticides. Just please be careful with those, especially during the rainy season. And the same thing if you're a boater, slowing down and making sure that, whatever trash is generated on the boat gets carefully taken off. So we can, as individuals, make a difference, but that doesn't excuse the fact or take the burden of us as elected officials. We have our work cut out for us, particularly on septic to sewer conversion. That is a very expensive proposition, somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. So every time I talk to my Congresswoman, Donna Shalala, when they start saying maybe after November, when we have a new president, we'll have an infrastructure bill, I try to make sure that blue and green infrastructure are part of that. And I always ask her to please make sure if an infrastructure bill is done that the idea of septic to sewer conversion is part of the process. So I'll stop there because I'd like to get to your Q&As. The link in the chat, there is a link to this presentation if you would like it. And then we're also happy to email it to you. And then Irela and team has kindly provided us a nice PDF of a short summary of the task force recommendations, and we'll happily email that to you afterwards. So Leanne, I'm gonna have you stop sharing the screen, if I can say all those words at once, and we'll get to some Q&A.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions. You can tell from the questions that there's a lot of smart people on this webinar. They know some things. So Steve Leidner is asking what regulation can be enacted on commercial fertilizer biosolids application. And he's wondering about between what the state regulates and what the county can regulate on commercial fertilizer and biosolids.
So the state does have some regulations on that, and Commissioner Levine Cava is working particularly because we have a big agricultural community here. Don't forget that it's not just, it's not just residential and commercial, meaning real estate commercial, but agriculture. So we do have to work within state guidelines for that. But part of what we also are going to do is do a certification program for applicators so that they, if we are forbidden from doing certain things by state law, we can certify, educate, and incentivize people. So for example, if you're a certified applicator, that tells people that you know how to use these kinds of products in a bay-friendly way. So you're right, we're going to have to negotiate around some of those. And I don't know, Irela, do you have any more details on that, or Lynette?
Oops, Lynette, you're muted.
Yeah, I certainly don't know any more about the current regulations, but I do think it's, I like the approach the county's taking to really partner with the ag community, because they're really an important part to our partnerships and also to our, the economy of Miami-Dade County.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's important when we craft policy, especially at the local level, that we're as creative as possible so that we can avoid the preemptions that come down, and that we partner with the private sector to prevent those special interests from blocking what we want to do down here, which is we've seen with plastic bags and polystyrene.
Great, thanks guys. So here's a question from Joe Connolly about chemicals that the South Florida Water Management District uses apparently in the canals to kill aquaculture. Sorry, I lost the question. He says that water goes out into the bay every storm and kills turtle grass, which I have a question. Is turtle grass the same thing as seagrass or something else? And he's saying that he sees this outside of the C100 at Deering Point. Is this a concern? Is this something that's included in the recommendations?
Everything that comes out of these canals is a concern. From fertilizers to whatever the district is using, and which is probably should be looked at. I mean, it's been years since I served on that board, so I really don't know what they're using right now. And it's funny because, and I know that Lynette, you probably remember that when they came to present to us, I asked for a canal maintenance schedule, and I'm still waiting for it. So, but we have invited them, or to be part of our governing structure, and we hope that we can create, you know, a stronger partnership with state government moving forward. But again, yes, the canals are of a much concern. Everything that goes in these canals and gets moved out and pushed out is of concern. And there are some canals that should probably be looked at for dredging, because there's a lot of legacy sediment that, if it gets moved around, makes things even worse.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is that, you know, as Arilla said, you know, we're looking at everything. The bottom line is we're kind of at the bottom of this big watershed that starts from Lake Okeechobee, and these canals just drain everything down. And, you know, part about what's been really great about South Florida is the canals have drained and let us live here. And that's the great part. The bad part, they drain everything. And so they continue to push things out. And part of our report really does call for that watershed approach. We know that the health of Biscayne Bay, we're going to have solutions that are outside the boundaries of Miami-Dade County, and continue to have that partnership with the bigger partners as well.
And we have to lead by example. So for example, in the canals near the airport, the county has a contract for I mean, you got to keep them clear, right? Which means theoretically, you've got to kill weeds. Well, you can kill weeds or you can chop them down, right? And so in the past, we've used chemicals for that. And so this year in the procurement, I wasn't quite successful in getting to forbid chemicals, but we actually had someone bid that just said, just give us the option to not use chemicals to do this, because their firm is doing it, I believe, in South Miami, and they're doing a similar work up in Broward County. And so they're keeping these canals free so that water moves and things can move up and down them, but they are not killing the kind of grass along the right-of-ways by using chemicals. So change is slow, but the fact that we think we'll be able to award a contract to someone that will be doing this in a very environmentally friendly way is part of the leadership on every canal matters. It's not just the ones further up.
That's great. Thank you all. Then we have a nice message from Tico Aran. Thank you all for your hard work and passion on this issue. And he has a question which I think is super interesting. Oysters eat algae, and the North Bay used to be an oyster fishery. Is there a reason why oyster restoration is not part of the conversation? Each oyster can filter 50 gallons of water per day.
Well, okay, Lynette, when we talked about our habitat restoration and recommendations, we didn't talk about oysters per se, but we did have conversations, and I know that our recommendations reflect using the natural system as best as possible to solve some of our problems, and particularly our, water quality issues. We talked a lot about mangroves, but certainly, our work was to develop recommendations and let this bigger group come up with the solutions and start implementing some actions. So we hope that we started, we hope we gave a good outline and primer for what's to come.
Yeah, I think, the way we phrased it was much more broad in terms of being able to reintroduce natural systems. And so, of course, the thing that we all tend to see are mangroves, but the broader conversation is really about how do we create these living shorelines that really bring us the benefits of water quality, habitat, and, quite frankly, a little bit, can you slow down some of those waves when we got some surge coming in? And so it's been very interesting to look at examples from other parts of the United States where they are reintroducing oysters. And so I think there's going to be some lessons learned from what we're seeing up in the Mid-Atlantic as well. But I love the question, and I encourage folks to continue to introduce that into the conversation of the type of habitat that we need to continue to bring back.
And then he also asked about the water quality monitoring, which I know is really important. How often and what is being measured in the bay? Are there any monitoring stations in the bay or the canals? And what is the picture with monitoring in our modern world?
So I'll take a stab at that and maybe Nick can follow. I'll tell you that back during my time in the Water Management District, we had a significant amount of water quality monitoring that was paid by the state government. As you all know, we went through some very brutal state administrations that cut a lot and didn't think the environment was an important thing to invest in. And so our water quality monitoring was reduced to the point where the county is now doing most of it with a little help from the state, but not enough. That's something that we did recognize that we need to enhance and actually, broaden. So hopefully now, and we, I'm happy to say that during this process, the state DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, did reach out to us and has committed to participate, to become a stronger partner and a funding partner. So that's good news. So I expect a lot of increases in water quality monitoring moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's what's really exciting is that on the water quality front, when we start to look at the data that we do have, there's a lot of data in different places with different purposes. So the question is really, are the data fit for purpose? And part of what this Chief Bay Officer position is truly consolidating, helping us really consolidate the data that are there, determine the needs that we have, because we've got derms out there, you've got the universities out there, you have some NGOs, and there's going to be a real strength in being able to have additional transparency. Of course, the state has their DB Hydro, but it's not as user-friendly as we'd like it, and so really being able to have something that allows us to consolidate information, have things be a little bit more geo-referenced, and get a little bit more user-friendly, because I care, geeks of the world unite, we all care on that, but the general public needs to understand what it really means to them and what it looks like. And so I'm really optimistic that having this position and having the consolidation will help on that aspect as well.
Thank you. So our constituent friend Kiki Muti says, is Biscayne Bay Aquatic Reserve still active, and what is their role? And she wants to thank everybody, you and Irela and Eileen and Lynette.
Yes, they are active. In fact, they came and they presented to us, and we expect them to be for them to be a stronger partner moving forward as well. I mean, I think this is an all hands on deck approach. So, the Aquatic Reserve I think should be strengthened. I think they should be better funded and really elevated so that they can become a stronger partner for the county. Again, it's back to what we were saying before. Everybody has to share the same information. Everyone's off doing their thing and doing great things, but no one's really coordinating. And we have enough data. We have enough data to understand where the problems are, where we can start. So this is kind of like going to the hospital with an emergency and triage. You go there first, and that's what we have to divide the bay up into emergency rooms and really attack it in that way.
That's good news that we have them on board. Jack Karagasian, he says, Irela discussed the funding necessary to make the changes. Is there a ballpark estimate and whether an increase in taxes fees is an option? The commissioner might have to answer some of that too.
Take that, I guess, Irela. So there's a couple things, like, for example, this fertilizer ordinance. It's not really going to cost anything to implement that, right? I mean, maybe Home Depot will sell a little less fertilizer during the months of July and August than they will during the dry season. But fundamentally, collectively, as a society, that reduces the giant nutrient load, which helps us with everything from, these nutrients are feeding all kinds of algae, including the green algae we don't like, red tide algae, sargassum is an algae, the seaweed is an algae. So nutrient load is something that's not super expensive. The septic to sewer conversion is expensive, and we are going to need federal dollars and we're going to need state dollars to make to make that happen. And yes, we're going to have some local participation. So one of the things that we've been pushing for months ago, right, Irela, we asked for a prioritized list of septic tanks, right? I can't spend $4 billion this year. Like, it's impossible. We don't have it, right? And particularly after the pandemic. But if you can tell us which 250 or which 500 septic tanks are the highest risk, right? They're either right next to the water table is rising, whatever it is. Then we can start to tackle those projects over time, and we can begin to fund from a risk perspective. And that we can probably fit in, within our existing budget. I mean, this next year is going to be not a good budget year, but we can plan for that. But these are the kinds of things, as Irela mentioned, we've got a lot of data, but we don't have information. Like I'm yelling, I'm like, where is the report that tells me which septic tanks need to be fixed today? Because then we could go fix them. So we've spent a lot of time analyzing. We don't analyze. But the information just the data never turns into information that we as a commission can say, these are the 500 we're going to start first, come up with a plan and tell us what it's going to cost to make that happen. So this year this year with COVID, nobody has any money to give, even, to pay their own rent, let alone give to government. But at the end of the day, this is the year with the task force. We got to create the plan. And we have got to hopefully convince the federal government that septic to sewer is as much of an infrastructure project as building a new highway is. They have plenty of money for new highways, sadly.
Well, I want to just follow up on that real quick, because we are already paying for the improvements to our water and sewer system. So what we need to do is make sure that this department, and this is kind of like my pet peeve with the commission, not just one commissioner, all commissioners, we need to ensure that these projects are expedited. And those are recommendations also in the infrastructure section in the report. We need to expedite a lot. We need to know where the vulnerable pipes are. We don't even know. So if we're already paying taxes and our rates have been increased to improve the system, then we need to know exactly where to start, and not just like, go off it without a plan. Like you were saying, and septic to sewer is very expensive. We know that. I want to say that at the commission meeting where we delivered our report, there were 2 resolutions that were passed, and 2 of them asked and urged the state government and the federal government to partner with the county and provide some funding. Again, we'll look at those vulnerable areas first. And if I could take a little point of privilege just to acknowledge that we have another member of our task force, Steve Sauls, who has been a longtime advocate of Biscayne Bay. He lives on the Bay. If you follow him on Facebook, you see his beautiful sunrise pictures every morning. I just shout out to him, and also to Alexi Manresa, who was our Biscayne Bay Task Force, everything, making sure that our meetings ran well, and he did everything. So I just want to give a shout out to staff, because it takes a lot to get things like this done, and it's going to take everyone, again, like I said before.
And I think I see Dave Dobler, another task force member. See, the task force is over, but they're not done.
Dave is part of this. He's kind of like a de facto task force member.
Exactly. All right. Let's see.
Volunteer cleanup. We love him.
Okay.
All
right.
I'm going to stick with septic tanks. I'm skipping over a couple that we'll get back to, but I can see we're still getting a lot of questions, and we're at 5:48, so I'm going to start compressing them a little bit, folks. So just to put a little knot on the septic conversation, Monica Gregory's asking, I think you answered it, Commissioner, what is the commission doing? But then she wants to know, what can constituents do to further those efforts? She says she's renting in UMSA on a septic, and she would like to decrease her own impact. Is there anything that a renter or a renter, it's a more complex situation, can do? And then at the same time, our constituent Don Deras is mentioning, as you all know, everybody knows the impact that the septic tanks have had on the nutrient load. And he is asking specifically about the technology. He's actually including, newer technology, suggesting that. And then, do we have laws to enforce the upgrade of septic systems?
I don't know that we have laws to force people to upgrade their septic system right now. And you ladies may know, but the estimate that I know is for an individual homeowner to kind of do this, let's say if sewer is within range for you, it's probably $10,000 to make that conversion. And of course, not every family can afford that. And so that's where, as we go forward, we have to find a collective solution to doing this. And we also have to work hard to make sure that new developments are not building with septic, right? They're building with sewer. So this has been something we've been kind of hanging around for a very long time. But with rising water tables, right? We don't just have water around us, we have water underneath us. And that's where the real risk for these septic tanks come, so.
Well, and we have sea level rise to deal with as well. So that's add another element to the septic tanks. But we did, in our report, we did address that issue with regards to septic and conversions. And we recognize obviously that there is the property owner has to assume some responsibility, and it's financial. So, I think that there's enough creative financing out there to really deal with some of these issues. And of course, that has to be at the policy level, working with our state and federal government partners, but it can be done because the cost of inaction, we can't lose the bay. I mean, it's our economy. So, so we have to weigh the pros and cons and really start where the problems are again.
Thank you. And then just a couple of quick questions with wanting a little more detail from our constituent, Rob Piper. Do we have more specifics about the fertilizer ordinance beyond the fact that we're trying to restrict use during the rainy season? And then Rob also wanted to know if there are more details about the chief bay officer. Are they going to have, direct impact, I think? Are they going to have staff? Are they going to have what they need to get the job done? I think is what Rob's after.
Oops, I muted myself. Okay, now I'm not muted. I think I can take that. The fertilizer ordinance it's taken a long time to come up with because we have to consider all kinds of things, right? Including the agricultural community and the landscaping industry, and how do we retrain that. So there'll be more details, and you guys will get to see a draft of that in the coming weeks. The second part of the question, I've now forgotten it. I'm sorry, Rob.
Chief Bay Officer.
Chief Bay Officer. Okay, Chief Bay Officer. Yes, they're going to have staff. And the next mayor is going to have to reorganize the county administration to make sure that that person is not just a figurehead, but actually has all of the supporting infrastructure to make this happen. And let me just tell you that the county has 28,000 employees. We can reorganize in a way to prioritize the success of the Bay. And I anticipate that the new mayor is going to make that a priority. And if he or she, we might have our first she mayor, if that person does not do that, you can expect legislation forcing that mayor to do that, because there are a number of us, myself on the commission and Commissioner Sosa, who is just not going to tolerate the chief bay officer not having the resources in that position to make that work. But Arella, you've sort of almost crafted a position description.
Well, we're working on it, but years back, and some of you that were in county government know that we had a kind of like a water czar in the manager's office before we went into this strong mayor type of government, which pretty much served in the same capacity. So it's not like we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just asking for a person that can really coordinate. Like, for example, internally, and you guys know this, departments don't talk to each other, cross departments. Like, why isn't Durham talking to water and sewer when there's, like in a very collective way to solve problems? Why isn't public works involved? There's, even within these departments, there's divisions that don't even talk to each other. So this is the type of person that can bridge all those gaps. And when we have issues, especially related to our water quality, can address them and can also go and advocate on our behalf at the Water Management District meetings in Tallahassee and develop those strong relationships with Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Interior, the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, there's a lot of work for this person to do. And we have plenty of staff that can help this person. We have an amazing Department of Environmental Protection within our county government. We have Public Works. We have we have an intergovernmental relations division. We have the tools that this person needs in order to be successful.
Thank you. I don't know if Steve wanted to say a couple of words. His hand was raised. If Leanne can unmute him, Steve, I don't know if you want to chime in. Steve, can you?
Yeah.
Hi, Steve.
Did you want to say anything?
You need
Hold
to
on, I'm trying to unmute him. Give me one second.
Okay, there he is. Now he's unmuted.
I want to thank Arella for her kind comments, and I want to thank Commissioner Higgins for hosting this important forum and for her leadership in helping us move forward the recommendations of the task force. We did really strong work, and we think it deserves attention and speedy implementation. A lot of the recommendations can be implemented within a year, a lot more within 1 to 3 years, but all of them need quick action. And while the long-term total effect of the transition off of septic systems is costly, they can be financed over time, and hopefully our various elected officials at the various levels will come together and figure out how to do that. I understand, for instance, that 10,000 are close to centralized sewer systems and can be hooked up soon if we could just figure out the ways and the means to get that done. So it's going to take everybody getting involved, and I really appreciate the interest in solutions here. That's all.
Thanks, Steve. Well, we have a lot of nice comments and suggestions and people providing information like, you know, that the water district used to clear the weeds by boat with hands, so they didn't have to use chemicals. Inez Mato encouraging our commissioner and the other commissioners to be very bold in their action and not to get, you know, hung up on, you know, making things perfect, but let's start to do things. I'm gonna, there was a technical question. I'm just gonna ask it. I don't even know. It says, what is the annuum percent? Do you guys know what that means? ANN, it's from David Fass. ANN, it's like annual M percent. So if that doesn't make sense, I'll ask David to, oh, I see, annual percentage increase in the number. Oh, I think this is going to be one we're going to have to get back to David on. He wants to know the number of toilets in our district versus the increase in wastewater processing capacity. I bet that's something somebody knows, but
There's going to be somebody in water and sewer that knows the answer to that question.
So David, we're going to get back to you on that. That will be an email response. We're not going to, we've got people who have that, but not right now. And then I'm going to ask a question that one other person asked. Does anybody know a little bit more about details about what Tampa Bay did to be so successful? Is their situation very different from ours? Or can we, I'm sure there's a lot we could learn from that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we use their process as a model as far as to build the governance structure, but they're a national estuary program, which really requires an act of Congress to really put in place, and it's funded. But you know how Congress can't get anything done right now. So we don't have time for that. So we realized that and said, okay, in the meantime, let's just work on our own plan. And if we have the opportunity to go in that direction, then we will. But we kind of need to kind of act on our own right now because it would take too long to engage in that type of process. And of course, they started their process, what, in the 70s, I think, the 80s?
It was a while. I don't remember the date. To me, the biggest take home of Tampa Bay is that, you know, and it's really relevant to us, is that there are a lot of no regret strategies that we can start with right now while we continue to get that question. The big question is, where are the loads? Who's doing it? How are they doing it? Blah, 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 right? That's going to take a little bit of time to get to, but we have the no regrets of fix our leaky pipes. We're already under a consent decree for that, like Dorella referred to. Go to the septics in the hot spots. Might not need to be every single one of them, but we already know which hot spots they are. We've got that. We know which ones they are, you know, maybe not house by house, but by area. And can we just get the trash out of the stormwater system? Like, it's pretty simple to start with these no regret strategies that are going to give us an immediate impact. Tampa Bay took several years to get to their load numbers. We're going to take the same amount of time to be able to get all of that right. But those no regret strategies really leave us with some real tangible benefits for the citizens of Miami-Dade County and quite frankly, our economy.
That's great. Commissioner, I was just wondering if you wanted to say any final words. We're at the hour. I do have a lot of good ideas from people, a lot of reiterating what you all have said, which I think is great. Like, make sure to get the boaters involved, make sure to get businesses involved. Everybody should be contributing. So I know you guys, that's the spirit of the task force, and I know that's how our commissioner sees things too. So I'm going to try to figure out how we can capture. Leanne and Anna will help me capture, I think, some of the comments to share with you all and with the attendees, because we've got really good ideas that unfortunately we don't have time to have an open discussion. I don't think this will be our last webinar on the Bay. I'm quite sure we'll be doing this again. But anyway, Commissioner, would you like to take us out for the evening?
Yeah, okay. First of all, thanks everyone. This is a topic that we know we want to save the Bay, but underneath it, the solutions are very technical. And so we're very grateful to the Biscayne Bay Task Force for giving us some of those solutions. And now, quite frankly, as commissioners, we have our marching orders. And as Lynette, I wrote this down, no regret solutions. I love that idea. And some of them are fast and inexpensive, and others of them require more planning, but we should be starting those soon. And I know on this call, there's a lot of collaborators for the Bay. You know, I'll give an example. I'm already starting to see, Lynette, that the city of Miami, particularly in some of the downtown areas, are installing some of the grates in front of the stormwater drains. I've seen Neil and I think Elena, a couple of others from the DDA, where we're very proactive about looking to put in a living shoreline. And then as I mentioned at the beginning, Commissioner Samuelian, a number of the team members from the city of Miami Beach on the other side of our Bay, are also on this call, because this collaboration between the county and the municipalities is pretty crucial. And then of course, Representative Nick Duran and his office are on, because we can't do this without the state. You know, most of the time they're supportive, but every now and then they block something. And so we do need to make sure people can loosen that up for us. So as I mentioned before, we'll try to get you the report for the task force. My team is certainly available to answer any questions. And if we don't know the answers, because sometimes we don't, we'll get them for you. And the most important thing we need from you all is to, you know, continue to advocate wherever you can for change, whether or not the regulations exist. And I forgot to mention kind of another partners in this. We've already had a lot of help from Commissioner Ken Russell, from the Brickell Homeowners Association, the Downtown Neighbors Alliance, to convene the big condo management companies, because they manage landscaping. And so already on a volunteer basis, from Edgewater down to Brickell, and even some over Miami Beach, they are already changing their practices voluntarily, because they've been educated about the fact that when they're using fertilizers in the summer, they've been doing it for decades probably. And so the fish kill opened a lot of people's eyes to say, yeah, we could make that change. And so education is going to be a big part of it. So keep in touch, keep advocating for the Bay. Every now and then we're going to have to push for some tough decisions at your city commission and your county commissions. And, you know, we'll give you a call if we need to, you know, have you send a few messages to other commissioners, so that we get what we want, which is a clean, healthy Bay, you know, that is at the core of our economy. Any other closing words, Arella, Lynette? Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody and thank you, Commissioner, for putting this event together because I think it was very educational and for highlighting the hard work that all of our task force members put in, 18 months worth of work. Volunteer.
But yeah, voluntold, exactly. And poor Lynette ends up being my appointee to 2 county boards. I'm sorry for bothering you twice, Lynette.
No, quite frankly, it's an honor. I mean, we all love this bay, and it's really part of our community fiber. And so, for all the folks that are on the phone, we really need that collective action and continue to go to your cities, your neighborhoods, get the word out because this is truly our cultural backbone, our community backbone, and just an economic driver. So it's an honor to serve. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks. We'll see you at
Everybody.
Waterside soon. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye.